Hi, I'm Peg Louiselle, the Executive Director of Wyoming Catholic Ministries Foundation. This video message is intended for all the priests of the Diocese of Cheyenne, as well as the leaders of our partner organizations. One question that comes up is what if a donor has strings attached? We're always very concerned about getting into a situation where a donor wants to, perhaps include a parish or their ministry in their estate, but they have a particular idea about how they want it spent. What's the best way to handle that in your experience?
Well, sometimes it happens by design and sometimes it happens by default. In that they didn't counsel you up front. They left you this and they said this is to endow the vestibule and always make the vestibule. And maybe the reality, you don't need support for that. You need support for other things. If there's an opportunity to go back and talk to the donor's family, maybe the donor's passed away, and you're trying to think, how can I live within this restriction? Well, maybe you can live within the restriction when you think broadly. At the same time, that's the importance of having a finance council. You can discuss these things. And if you think you're really in a quandary, I don't know if we can carry out the wishes of our donor, then you want to really go back to the family and say, look, we really appreciate what George said in his will. And the needs of the parish are this. And he specifically said this. We can do most of this, but I don't know if we need all of it. Would you allow us to spread it even further within the needs of the parish? That's one way. Another way, you can go to judicial reform. You can go to court and ask for some guidance on this thing. But almost all gifts come with direction, in that you call it instructions, strings, I'll call it direction, in that this is for St. Bonaventure's parish and only. If it is too restrictive, again, you have to go the other routes. If there's an opportunity to come back to you and say, Father, I'm thinking about this, to do this, then I think that's where you have, again, a good conversation. It's a business decision at this point. How best, can we accept that direction? And give them some guidance and give them some parameters.
And that's how the foundation can come beside any of our organizations and ministries and parishes.
Well, you are their partner.
We build the endowments, and so we can help with that, the language, we can help with the agreements, all of that. So it sounds like if a parishioner comes back and says, I am going to include you at 2.5%, step one is to meet with that parishioner, and certainly to let me know, because you have to have that initial conversation. What do you want to accomplish with your gift?
Well, if the donor opens the door, like you just mentioned, what they're really saying is, Father, how will you spend my money? And I think that's very important for us to respond that, what would you like us to do with your funds? Give us some direction. Not too much, but enough that makes, reasonable sense.
So what if a donor chooses to give a non-cash gift, say of land or some other asset?
That's a good question, Peg, because today not everybody gives cash, because it isn't perhaps in their best interest to give you cash. It may be in their best interest to give you stocks. Again, they may have purchased it many years ago, now it's worth something. They may have mineral rights that were worth something, that are really worth something today. These are non-cash gifts. And they're wonderful to get. Even somebody may be selling a ranch and they don't want to pay all the taxes because it's appreciated dramatically. They may want to give you a certain percentage of the ranch property so that that part of the sale is not taxed, but it goes directly to the parish and the ministries. And the beauty of that is the donor gets the income tax deduction. But more often than not today, many people are rethinking how they do their giving. And for some, it will always be cash, because it's the easiest, it's what they're comfortable with, it's what they want to do. others, sometimes because of advice from their advisors, it may be more prudent and more beneficial to give an appreciated asset rather than the cash. And the reality is, whether it's stocks, bonds, or real estate in the hands of the parish, it's the same. It's convertible to cash.
So to summarize, what are the top 3 takeaways that our priests and our leaders can take back with them today?
Whether you like it or not, you're a fundraiser. But you don't have to make it difficult or complicated. Again, we talked about the easy thing. Everybody can include the parish, their ministries, in their will or trust. Everybody needs a will or trust to pass their assets to their family and to the parish and to the ministries. It has to be memorialized through a will or through a trust. And the important thing is, it's not just for giving something to the parish, it's for your family. The family, I've heard horror stories through our bereavement ministry where the family's at the funeral and they're actually talking about the will trust and what a mess it is because there wasn't adequate planning in advance. Again, it's important they do that planning for their family. It's important they do that planning to include their parish or their ministries. And how do we encourage that? We encourage that by talking about it. If we had a success, and again, you may be new to that parish. You're only 3 years in this parish. But maybe 6 years ago, there was a bequest that came to that parish. You should do a little research on that. And important thing is you can highlight that. Many of you might have known George. He left us this. The reason we were able to do some of the things we do is because George left us a fund, and we get some income off this fund every year to help us with the parish. I'd ask you to give some prayerful consideration to do what you can do for this parish through your will or trust. Not that I want you to not give on Sunday, I want you to give on Sunday, but the question is when you leave this world, are you willing to leave something? So again, there's 2 things we can do. We can put some information in the bulletin, ask for prayerful consideration to including the parish or the ministries in their will or trust. And then when people come up to you, Father, and or lay leaders of the parish, what can I do for you? Well, there's 2 things. I'd like you to consider, having an up-to-date will or trust and an up-to-date health care directive to protect your family, as well as, number 2, would you consider including your parish and the ministries in your will or trust?
And the other thing that's true is it's an easy gift to ask for because you're not asking them for something right now.
You're right.
So to ask for that in addition to their Sunday support or their annual support to your organization, it's not a big ask, and you're not going to be insulting them by doing so.
Not at all. In fact, you might be doing them a doggone good favor because we're all procrastinators. 60% of the population will die without a will or trust. It's a messy situation. It's messy and it's expensive, and yet it's fully avoidable by taking some action now. Yet, I think the most important thing is don't be afraid to have the conversation. And don't try to be Peg, don't try to be me. Be yourself. Figure out how you would like to say this to your parishioners. Figure out how you would like to communicate. You're available for questions. I'm your backup if it gets to that point too. But it's a matter of just having a casual conversation. Would you give some peripheral consideration to including our parish and our ministries in your will or trust?
Easy enough. Well, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Sincerely, thank you, Jim. And stay tuned for more resources and information that's going to be sent to you in the coming months and weeks. And thank you for all that you do in support of the church in Wyoming.